Radio Free Santa Clarita presents The Talk of Santa Clarita, a podcast about issues involving Santa Clarita and the surrounding valley. Episode 127, Republican candidate for the 25th Congressional District, Suzette Martinez Valladares. And now, let's see what the Talk of Santa Clarita is.
And remember, this is for posterity, so be honest.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to do this today.
Of course.
It's been, I think, you're my first podcast in over 2 months, so I'm going to have to get back in my groove with doing this. So
happy to help you do that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing it. Let's start with just some simple stuff. Like, first of all, how is the campaign going for you? You've been how long ago did you announce?
It seems like a year ago, but it's only been a couple months. I was the first candidate to announce on April 2nd. So I don't know what's today, June, 2.5 months. It's going really well. It's long hours. I'm a working mom, and I have my mom's preschool that I'm also operating. Mm-hmm. So I'm busy, but I'm also on the campaign trail full time. And the most fun part for me is just meeting people and hearing their personal stories and earning their support. And also I'm doing I'm totally going to plug here. I do a Facebook Live town hall yes, you did. And I don't know if you came on near the end or if I just missed it. I saw you. Thank you for joining. But it's really a great opportunity for me to, just listen to questions from my constituency and my neighbors, and really, people across the United States, because I have followers from all over. So It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Who came up with that idea to do that? And I think it's really, what a great way to connect to everybody in the process of doing it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And our district is massive, right? So on a lucky day, if I was traveling from Lancaster to, Simi Valley, with no traffic, it would take me 2 hours, right? If I'm lucky. So, I just, the reality of campaigning, raising money, meeting with voters, it's hard to be everywhere all the time. So This is an opportunity where people are going to know it's going to be consistent for them to talk to me about the issues that are important to them.
How many listeners or watchers are you getting on average?
So I think the last one was one of the highest, and we had over almost 2,200 views.
2,200, wow.
Yeah, and we had, that was 2,200 impressions, and it was about 1,100 views.
Wow,
so
that's
and that
great.
Continues to go up.
Why are you even on this dog and pony show?
Right. Well, because you have a different audience that that is important to me as well. So, yeah. We call them the Santa Clarita 7. I'm sure you have 8 by now.
Maybe. Okay. Well, my dog, if you count, maybe we'll count half. Well, let's talk a little bit about just who you are. Yeah. Where are you from exactly? Where were you born?
I was born in Silmar.
Okay.
So just, across the little freeway over here. Mm-hmm. Born and raised.
Right.
Graduated from Silmar High School. Mm-hmm. I actually started working at Magic Mountain when I was 16.
What'd you do at Magic Mountain?
I was a ride operator. My first ride was Jetstream.
Okay.
And then I moved over to Flashback. Yeah. And I was a ride operator for a while, ride soup. I worked was a supervisor for the front gate.
Were you really?
Eventually loss prevention. So I investigated internal theft.
My first job out here was actually at Magic Mountain.
Was it?
Yeah, I did cash control.
Did you do cash control?
Yeah.
Okay. When were you there?
Oh, God, 96, somewhere around there. I'm old.
No, well, I started in 97.
Really?
Yeah.
We may have run into each other.
I know. You may have given me cash bags. No, but when I dealt with cash control, I was the front gate supervisor, okay. So we were in the truck.
Oh, okay. It was, I think I did the truck a couple of times.
Did you?
Yeah,
okay.
So. Yeah,
very cool.
I just remember the great thing about that was the cash control, I didn't have to wear the uniform, but during lunch break, I'd just go out and ride the rides for an hour, It was, got all the Magic Mountain I ever needed during that summer, so.
And you know what? That was such an amazing experience. I have friends still. I feel like, it was like my second high school, right? Like experience. And so I kind of feel like I grew up here. in Santa Clarita because of that experience, and have lifelong friends really still to this day.
Where did you go to college? You went to college?
I went to college at the Canyons.
Right.
So graduated Sylmar High. Went to college at the Canyons. Was there for 2.5 years. Political science was or social science was my AA. But I did Model UN with Tamara Hardesty, who was a wonderful professor there. So international affairs was really interesting to me.
And then Northridge, right?
Yeah, I went to
Cal State Northridge. And got your bachelor's or
political science.
Okay.
Yep. And again, another great experience. Actually, I did go to UC Riverside for a year, but I was commuting. I was living in Pasadena. I was paying for it out of pocket. I was commuting from Pasadena to Riverside. It was just too much. So I had a little gap in between. Between UC Riverside and CSUN.
And you live close to Agua Dulce now?
So now I live in Acton. So it's actually Palmdale, Acton.
Okay.
So it's crazy because my street sign says Acton, my zip code says Palmdale. My
That's not
school,
confusing.
No, not at all, right? But I love it. We have 10 acres.
Yeah.
We're hard to find. Our neighbors are few and far between, but I have amazing neighbors. So.
Right. And you ran a nonprofit for a while, right?
Yeah, well, I'm running a nonprofit now.
Okay.
My mom passed away last year from pancreatic cancer. Thank you. She had actually started a preschool, faith-based early learning preschool in 2015. Because of I had a niece who was diagnosed as severely developmentally delayed. She was nonverbal and on the autism spectrum when she was 2 years old.
Yeah.
And my mom had actually worked for Los Angeles Unified School District and special needs department and as a special needs assistant and then as a healthcare assistant, and was able to see the signs. So my niece was diagnosed at about 2.5, which is big for Latinos because Latinos tend to get diagnosed later with most developmental delays. So it was a big deal, and I saw the early intervention services that my niece received, and making sure that children had access to early intervention services as well as early learning became a huge issue for me.
It's my understanding the early intervention for autism can make a huge difference in their lives.
It's life-changing.
Yeah.
I mean, even my own niece's case in point, and therapy and services for individuals on the spectrum have changed so much in the last 10 years, which is how long ago my niece was diagnosed. But literally, she went from being 2 years old and not having a single word in her vocabulary.
Wow.
She was very intelligent. She was OCD, that was very apparent. And she went from not having one single word in her vocabulary, throwing tantrums and fits because she couldn't communicate, to getting intervention services in very intense services, to being a little chatterbox and just a completely different child. And now she has a 4.0.
Nice.
She will always be on the spectrum. It's even though you can improve the quality of life, it's not something that goes away. She will for the rest of her life continue to need some type of services like most individuals on the spectrum. But you're right, absolutely right. It changes lives, and that goes with all developmental delays. So the earlier that we can intervene and give child services, the better quality of life they'll have.
I find it okay. Here you are running for Congress, and I think you already know where I'm going with this. There is an amazing parallel here. You went to college at the Canyons, went to Cal State Northridge, live in the Acton area, and run a nonprofit. Does that sound like anybody we know?
Not at all, right? Well, yeah, but those are, that's just the top surface. I know that,
Sure.
We, both, I think you're talking about our current Congresswoman.
Yes.
We do have parallels. Clearly, she's a passionate person. So am I. But we're night and day, and not just because she's a blonde and I'm a brunette. But our political philosophies. I grew up in a different. I grew up differently. I obviously don't know her. I don't know how she grew up. But
you never met her? No,
I've never met her.
Okay.
I've been in the same locations as her, but just never had the opportunity. But. Similarities, but in terms of political ideology and what drives us, and really our backgrounds, completely different.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you being a Republican. Okay, I always find it fascinating, Democrat or Republican, and I usually ask these questions of politicians. But where does your how did your political ideology
Al Gore.
develop? Al Gore? I remember reading that
Al
in the Proclaimer.
Gore. So, and actually, I'll step a little bit further back because I've always been very vocal and very passionate about community. My grandparents, on my father's side, were born and raised and worked the fields in Delano, Bakersfield, Kern County. My grandmother actually worked with Cesar Chavez in one of his grape plantations, or plants, not plantations, plants back, in the 40s and 50s. And my grandmother was very political and advocate. So my first experience and understanding that when you can bring together a community and speak up for an issue, you can actually make a difference or get some attention was in third grade.
Okay.
So there was a little thing called the Exxon Valdez mobile oil spill in the 1980s. And I remember watching that on TV, seeing how it had affected ocean life and seeing birds with oil all over their bodies.
Right.
And as a, probably 9-year-olds in third grade, so 9-year-old, it was traumatic. And I remember going to school and talking about it, and my third grade teacher, Mr. Smith, who is actually a Facebook friend of mine today still.
Nice.
Said, Suzette, well, what do you want to do about it? And I was like, well, let's write the President of the United States. So we wrote President Bush at the time, and he responded.
Did he?
He responded, and it was probably a secretary or
right, but still cool.
But it was pretty cool, right? That our entire class wrote a letter, and we got a response, and it kind of there started the advocacy flame in my heart. And then my mom, having worked with the special needs community, volunteered in special needs classrooms all of my elementary and junior high school years, and in high school, my school counselor knew that I was kind of vocal about politics. I hadn't quite picked a party, but she was like, "Well, Al Gore is going to be speaking at Fairfax High. Fairfax High. You should come see us. So come see him." So I went to go see him speak, and everything he said. And again, this was 20 years ago, so I don't remember verbatim. I just remember the feeling like, well, I don't believe that. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. I come from a family, Christian conservative family, where family values and loyalty are important, where hard work is important. My dad was a small business owner. My dad never graduated high school, but he was an auto mechanic that worked hard every day to provide for our family. I saw, he would get home late. My mom was home taking care of us. My mom worked part-time sometimes. We were a middle-class family, and sometimes we were a poor family. It was never, it was sometimes feast or famine for our family.
Sure.
So I knew nothing would ever be given to me free. I knew that I had to work hard. I knew that they wanted me to get an education. I had older brothers that had gotten involved in drugs and gangs and fell into that lifestyle that affected my family deeply. I looked around me at the Democrats who were on city council, in LA City Council, and the Democrat leaders, and here the high school dropout rate was more than 50%.
Right. 3
of my 10 high school girlfriends were pregnant before graduating high school. All of these, I was told I was Hispanic, and the Democrats support Hispanics and people who are poor, and that's the party that you should align with. But none of it made sense to me, and Al Gore was speaking about it, and none of it made sense to me.
What part didn't make sense? I mean, that's the thing.
Well, what I was 17 years old,
right.
And it didn't make sense that if their policies were supposed to help to advance my community and Latinos, where was it?
Right.
So there wasn't that connection of what their party's policies are producing in my community are effective. Right? So it made me question, well, maybe I'm not a Democrat. And so Al Gore, kind of solidified, well, you need to see what these parties are about. Right. And, Republicans are about personal responsibility. They're about limited government. They're about more local control, which is what, it resonated with me. Right. It resonated with me that, you should be empowered to make decisions for your life and to have government stay out of it as much as possible. I believe there's a role and a responsibility, but it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be big government. So
it's interesting though, because you talk about your first desire to get involved with advocacy was the Exxon Valdez. Right. It could be argued that one of the reasons the Exxon Valdez happened was because there was a lack of government control over
Absolutely.
it. So,
well, I mean, I think that there's a very big misconceptions that Republicans want no regulation, right, and want no oversight, and that's just not a reality. Or, I think that there should have been oversight. Even out here, Aliso Canyon was a result of some loosey-goosey regulation, right? So I support regulation, especially when it's for public safety, absolutely. But I think there are over 190,000 regulations that we've implemented since the 1970s.
Okay.
And a large percentage of those can be cut to allow our economy to thrive while not compromising public safety.
Give me an example of one that could be cut.
I'm
putting you on the spot.
You are totally putting me on the spot, and I may think you made it hot in here for a reason to make me sweat a little bit. I'll come back to you with that because I don't want to misspeak.
It's our first time together, so I'll give,
and I wasn't thinking about going that
deep.
deep into policy right now. But no, I mean, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce put out a great report a year or two ago about some of the regulations that they suggest that can be cut. And we need to take a serious look at it. I mean, if we've had 190, I don't know the answer to this, but if we've had 190 regulations passed since the 1970s, our economy and technology, all of those things have changed very drastically. So it would be irresponsible of us to not look back and say, does this regulation make sense anymore? Right. Okay. Which is which is what I would want to do in Congress is, there needs to be an assessment of these regulations. I think the president's doing that too right now too. Yeah. To give him some credit there.
Well, let's talk about the president a little bit.
Yeah.
To me, and anybody who listens to this show knows I'm not a fan of Trump. And I'll say it honestly, it's not because, I don't consider him a Republican. You know what I mean? He seems anything but a Republican. And you see people like George Will and Nicole Wallace, Bill Kristol walking away from the Republican Party based on the fact that Trump, as they say, Trump is not really a Republican. Right. How do you feel about the president? Are you a Trump Republican or are you a Republican?
I'm a Republican, but more so I'm a modern conservative, and I've been calling myself a modern Republican because I believe that there are conservative solutions to our modern day issues, and I champion those issues that aren't traditionally considered conservative issues: education, autism, healthcare. These are issues that are important to me that Republicans have not won on recently. But to say that Trump isn't a Republican, it's kind of like the same talking point that they used about Bush as well, right? He spent too much, so he wasn't a conservative. He spent too much, so he wasn't a Republican, right?
I think there was a definite difference between those two.
I'm saying, no, I'm not saying that they're the same. Yeah. I'm just saying that the argument was made also during the Bush administration that he wasn't conservative, and he wasn't.
I'll give you that.
With his faith-based initiatives, like they didn't think that was a conservative philosophy.
Really?
Well, the way that he wanted to fund it, right? To offer more funding and more spending at the federal level for that. He was, even though obviously the issue Christian tends to be more they tend to be more Republican and conservative. But there are things that I don't agree with the president. I support the president of the United States. I consider myself I'm a lifelong Republican. I was probably a Republican before he was. So I'm not going to say that I'm walking in his footsteps by any means. Maybe he's walking in mine.
Yeah, maybe so.
But I support, the President of the United States, and
Do you support him because he's the president, or do you support Trump?
I support him because he's the president.
So if Barack Obama was president, you would be supporting him?
I did, and I criticized Barack Obama, and I've criticized Barack Obama whether it was a Paris Accord or DACA and the overreach of the executive branch and the administration, and the same with the president. While, when we talk about things that the president has done that I don't necessarily agree with, while I do think there's a crisis at our southern border, I think it needs to be handled through the legislature, through Congress. So I would disagree with any overreach at the executive level, and call the president out on that and support him when his policies work. And they have been working. They have been working for Latino families and African American families. We have the lowest unemployment rate for those two demographics than we've ever had. The economy is doing well. So I support the majority of his policies. I don't always support his tactics, but hey, He's not a traditional politician.
What about zero tolerance in the immigration situation and child separation?
What do you mean? Explain that a little bit further.
Well, the attitude of the Trump administration, or the policy of the Trump administration, is zero tolerance on any illegal immigrant or undocumented coming across the border. There is no, as far as in other words, they're breaking the law, so they're going to be put into some type of prison or internment camp or whatever.
I don't think that it's that. I think he's actually very compassionate when it comes to
really?
the border, and I think that there is a misconception. I think he's trying to fix. I think he's trying to fix the problem at our southern border, and we have a crisis. When you have 140,000 people crossing that border in a month, and when I think about the incentives, we are creating an incentive through a broken immigration system that says if you come to our southern border and you come with a child, you're gonna get into her. We're gonna allow you in. We're gonna, whether it's a 20-day holding period or whatever it is, we're gonna allow you in, and then we're gonna set you loose into the United States because there's nothing for us to do at that point because our system is broken and we can't process your whether it's asylum request or whatever it is. Right? We're incentivizing that because our system is broken.
Okay, there's a lot of things to unpack there, but the first thing is and just very blatant, open. How do I say this? Do you just support the idea of kids in cages? I mean,
no, absolutely
the
not.
Separation of children from their families.
Absolutely not. And I blame I blame the Obama administration for starting that. And
what? No, they didn't. That's not the case.
Oh yeah, the incentives and the broken system happened very much so during the Obama administration. And actually, as a matter of fact, President Obama on his campaign trail promised that immigration reform was going to be his top priority. And he did that just to win the Hispanic vote. And Jorge Ramos even criticized him about that. He refused to solve our immigration system, and so did Democrats. They had 2 years of House rule, of Senate rule, and a Democrat president, and they did nothing because they don't want to solve the issue because they think that it's a wedge issue and they're going to continue to try and court the Latino vote over it, and it's wrong. And both
You're getting
parties,
angry with me.
Well, I'm not getting angry with you. I'm getting angry with this issue because both parties have failed on this issue.
Yes, I'll agree with you on that. But you are aware that Obama did put together a bill that had enough votes in the House to pass and enough votes in the Senate to pass.
And President Bush put together a bill that Harry Reid refused to take up.
Hold on. John Boehner refused to put the bill on the floor to a vote, but it was immigration reform. So, I mean, and there were votes from both parties that were willing to pass it. It was Boehner that stopped it from passing.
And the same thing happened in 2006. And this is why I say both parties have failed at this issue.
Okay.
And when I go to Congress, it's going to be a top priority for me, and I'm going to yell at the rooftops until we get it done, and it will require bipartisan work. And I know that, especially with the California delegation, there is an appetite to get this done. And the reason why I get so angry about it is because I think about the drug trafficking at the southern border. Family and friends of mine who have fled Guatemala or Nicaragua. I think about the drug trafficking. And my brother had a 10-year addiction to methamphetamines.
I'm sorry.
The Antelope Valley was the methamphetamine capital of the United States for quite some time. We literally had El Chapo's wife giving birth in the Antelope Valley, at the Antelope Valley Hospital, right? The gangs infiltrated in our community, in this very community, right? In Sylmar, San Fernando, where I grew up, my family has been impacted by this. And if we have a safe, secure, and modern border, it's going to stop drug trafficking. It's going to stop sex trafficking. It's going to stop human trafficking. If we have a safe, secure, and modern border and a system that allows for true asylum seekers to come into our country through the front door that deserve that asylum, then it's going to stop the unnecessary abuse of youth, right? Because right now there were over, I think, 16,000 cases of known child abuse last year from the southern border, right? And that's because that funding in our system is broken and it's wrong, and it's Congress's responsibility.
There is, first of all, let's get back to the kids in cages. 13,000 kids right now, it was estimated, currently are separated from their parents. Do you support that idea?
Absolutely not.
So
what's super concerning to me, I don't think we should separate families at all.
Okay.
And whatever we can do to keep families together, we should do. But I also know that there's a huge problem on verifying whether or not those children are actually related to the individuals that they are so-called family with. And it's because of our broken system that it's my understanding that coyotes are now using children and recycling them back into a system in order to get people to be able to cross the southern border. That's wrong. We're abusing children here. We're trafficking children.
How many cases of that do you know of for a fact, though?
I don't know of the cases for a fact, but I'll make sure I get some information for you when I can.
I'll give you that.
And it's you know it's not necessarily they're trying to track that. Because, and I don't know how they're going to track that, whether it's DNA, but it's also my understanding that, you know, they're completely underfunded there, right?
But see, a lot of there's been arguments that, Ted Cruz put forth the idea that one of the reasons they could take care of a lot of the problem with the people requesting amnesty by just getting more judges.
Asylum people request.
Asylum
right,
people,
right.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And Trump said no.
Well, I agree with Ted Cruz on that.
Okay. The zero tolerance policy, you talk about the kids in cages thing, saying that was put forth before the Obama administration. I think it was done a couple of times, and then there was a court ruling stopping it. So it didn't happen to the excess, and there wasn't a zero tolerance policy for it.
Well, it's because the system has been gradually torn down and torn down and torn down. So we're seeing a bigger influx. And now it's very well known in Latin America that if you come to the border with a child, that isn't necessary. We have to find a way to verify that those children, without separating them, obviously, actually belong to individuals and they're not just being used. I mean, how can that not be a priority?
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with you on that. I'm curious, though, why do you think that right now we're getting such an influx of undocumented?
Because they know if you come to the southern border and you seek asylum, and again, this is anecdotal, I'll see if I can find the firm evidence for you here. But they're literally practically given scripts on what to say, especially when you have a child. They know that you come to the southern border with a child, you're going to be allowed in, you're going to maybe be retained for 20 days, sometimes less, and be kicked out into the United States. You're going to be given your hearing. You may or may not return to that hearing. And that's how you beat the system.
Do you think that the majority of undocumenteds are dangerous people?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
The majority of undocumenteds living in the United States, absolutely not.
Are the majority trying to come across the border? Do you think that they're
absolutely not?
Okay. It seems.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a system and we shouldn't protect children. And it doesn't mean, they may be coming for a variety of reasons.
But you do agree right now, by separating the children, they're not protecting the children.
Absolutely.
Okay, you do agree. You're opposed to that. You would oppose that if you were in Congress.
Correct.
Okay. One of the things I saw, and I didn't expect us to get so quickly into immigration. That's okay.
I'm passionate about it.
But I did see on your website that you disagreed with Congresswoman Hill's, a vote against funding of the wall.
Yeah.
You think a wall would solve the problem?
I think barriers in specific areas would absolutely solve a problem.
Okay.
But it's not just, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be visiting the border next Saturday with some Border Patrol friends of mine. And when the border is underfunded, and it's not just a wall that is needed. It's infrastructure, it's boots on the ground, it's technology. I was talking to a a retired Border Patrol agency.
Congresswoman Hill doesn't disagree with you on
that.
Yeah,
but she doesn't want to adequately fund it.
Well, no.
And she didn't.
The funding was specifically to build a literal concrete wall.
The president is not even asking for a 200-mile concrete brick and mortar wall. That's not what he's asking.
That's not.
For.
I've seen tape of him say it's going to be.
I get it.
He's described
I get that. That's what. But when you talk to Border Patrol and and Congresswoman Hill even admitted that the president is not asking for that. So let's be real. She is very partisan.
Okay.
We know that she's Nancy Pelosi's protege right now. Or BFF, or favorite, or teacher's pet. I'm just kidding. Am I getting a little aggressive there? Anyway, so she's very partisan, and she was 3 days into Congress, she was very partisan on that issue. And it's an issue that, when I'm talking to stakeholders in this community that are not just Republican, that are Democrats too, they want a safe, secure, and modern border, which is what we need, and it needs to be adequately funded. And that, again, was a political game, complete political game.
Okay, well, I want to just kind of go back to some of your ideology. For example, Congressman Knight, when he was in office, was he doing a good job?
In 2018, he was actually voted one of the most effective legislators in his Congress.
Okay.
He was an effective legislator. I think he was a great legislator. I don't agree with him on everything, on all of his policy positions by any means. There are things if I were the congresswoman at the time he was, and votes I would have taken that were different from his. But he's a nice man, and he's been a great legislator and a true leader in our community.
Friend of the show. So.
Yeah.
And you also worked with Buck McKeon.
Yeah.
Was he a good congressman?
When I was there, when I worked for Buck, he was a good congressman.
Okay.
One of the things that I learned about when I was with him is, I'm trying to remember what year it was, but he had taken a position on Puerto Rico and statehood, and they were presenting a bill, and he had taken a position on it, and we had received so many calls in the office in opposition to his position that he actually changed his position. So for me at that time, seeing that you can be a leader, you can have your opinions, but when you actually listen to your constituency and your constituency has that connection with you where they can change your vote, it was really a significant learning experience for me.
What do you think about the fact that he's become a lobbyist? From my understanding, one of his clients is Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
If I were a lobbyist, I wouldn't have Saudi Arabia as my client. But I don't want to speak for Buck.
Is he supporting your campaign?
He is not supporting my campaign.
He's not supporting your campaign?
No.
Do you know why? Did he give you a reason, or did you talk to him about it?
I did talk to him about it,
Yeah.
and apparently he appointed the other candidate to the Naval Academy a long time ago, and they've had a relationship ever since.
I see.
And that's why I decided to support him. Yeah.
One of the things you said on your website is there are things you agree with the president and other things you don't agree with. Tell me specifically what you don't agree with.
I don't agree with any executive power overreach. So, for instance, with him trying to divert funding to the southern border through executive order is wrong.
Okay.
I think it's something that Congress is responsible for. Completely disagreed with him on that. I'm not big on tariffs. I do not support tariffs, but he's managed to be able to use them as bargaining chips.
Let's just clarify tariffs. Now, he claims that we're not paying for them.
Tariffs are taxes on the American people.
Okay, so we agree on that.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
So he's lying then, right? When he says that we're not paying those tariffs?
Well, I think that he's bargaining. I don't think he's lying. I think that he's bargaining. I think he's a businessman, and he wrote The Art of the Deal, right?
Technically, Tony Schwartz did. But.
I know. I was going to say, wait a minute. But the reality is, he's a deal maker, and I understand. I understand the strategy and the strategy behind it. I don't always agree with his tactics.
Okay.
By any means, Trump, the celebrity, is a lot harder for me.
Did you support him in the 2016 election?
I did vote for him in 2016.
In the primary, did you vote for him?
No, actually, my first pick was Marco Rubio, and I actually actively worked on his California campaign. And then actually not actively, it was at the very beginning stages, and then Ted Cruz, he dropped out, and I was very active on Ted Cruz's California campaign, and it was a big disappointment for me, because Ted Cruz, being a constitutional conservative and a Christian and
everybody
Hispanic,
apparently hates him.
I know. I don't know why I like Ted Cruz. And the president at the time, had to work really hard to earn my vote. I wasn't going to vote for Hillary, but he still had to work for my vote, so I did vote for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you, as a conservative, what do you think the role of government is then?
to be limited. I mean, being.
Well, I mean, that's kind of broad.
I know it's to be limited. So I go back to my political science 101. And government being the legislature, Congress, their responsibility is to tax and spend, and to create oversight and be the check and balance for, our system. I think that while that their job is to tax, spend, and create legislation and policy, that they're to do so responsibly. They're to spend tax dollars responsibly and to cut when they can. And to spend when they need to.
Should they be helping the poor?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, did you support the Trump tax cuts?
I did not.
Okay. Tell me why not?
Because I don't believe that just because our system in California is different than other systems that we should be taxed on taxes. And that's essentially what has happened.
You would have voted against that?
I would have voted against the state and local tax deduction elimination. Yeah, absolutely. Or the capitant.
One vote. It was one vote for the full tax cut.
Right. I would have had. Again, why would I vote against my very own interest and constituents' interest? I personally lost, $3,000 or $4,000 because of it. Yeah. And I know the other people in the district have lost that too. And
the deficit increased as a result.
Right. Absolutely. And you see that other states are flourishing with the tax cuts. And while we have a strong economy in California, and sometimes it baffles me given the regulation and the taxes that we pay here. But the reality is we could be doing so much more if we were able to write off those deductions.
Where would you, if you don't support the tax cuts and you recognize that it increased the deficit, what would you do to fix the deficit situation? Is there I assume you don't support taxing anymore, or taxing corporations, or taxing people.
We need to cut spending.
Where?
I think, something for us to consider, to look at is the Farm Bill and the subsidies that give agriculture.
But you just said that the government is there to help the poor. The Farm Bill itself handles SNAP, which is food stamps. So that would cut.
Well, portions of I'm not saying we eliminate the Farm Bill, but I'm saying that there are subsidies that we can get rid of that truly we're paying to big agriculture. Okay. Right?
Yeah, I get you.
Right. Okay. That's one thing. The deficit is huge, and our spending is massive, and I'm continuing to look into how we can actually, as a fiscal conservative, I run my household on a budget, and when I can't afford something 1 month, like if I have to go a month without getting my nails done, I don't get my nails done that month. But the reality is we have to act like that in Congress, and one of the first things that I would look at is how we can cut some serious spending in the Farm Bill. And there are probably other things that we can do too, and it will continue to evolve. Do you have a recommendation?
Do I have a recommendation? Yeah. Raise taxes on corporations.
No.
Amazon didn't pay anything last year.
I know.
And
But I also look at, for instance, Target, right? They're a huge company. Yeah. They've benefited from the Trump tax passage last year. And they're doing things like providing.
I saw that post on your website. But
things like Patagonia. What did they invested? I think whatever their unexpected return was to something. I don't remember what it was. But I love that when I'm seeing that big businesses who have profited from this, from this tax cut, are investing it back into their employees and back into the economy, and I think it's spurring the economy.
Well, but
again, can you deny that unemployment? We've been waiting for this. Our GDP growth, our unemployment, all of these things are amazing factors that I think all Americans are benefiting from.
Yeah, I don't disagree that the economy's doing well. But I do think, for example, you talk about Target, but on the other end of it, you've got Amazon not paying anything and not benefiting their workers in any way. It seems to me like that's where government needs to
Right.
step in.
Right.
You know,
I don't know much about Amazon spending or what they're doing or what they've done with it. It's definitely something, to consider for me to look into. But I do look at all these other big businesses that are reinvesting, and even, even Walmart, I hear, is doing a little bit better. They're often criticized.
So Reaganomics,
in terms
and
of
the principle, the basic economic principle of cutting taxes for the wealthy will trickle down to the
Well,
poor.
I think we need to cut taxes not just for the wealthy, it's for the middle class. I mean, I think especially here in California, we look
Right.
at the one-party system that is actually driving out the middle class. We have more rich people and more poor people. 25% of Californians are living in poverty, right? And that's because of the cost of living, right? We talk about the homeless population, right? And 25% of the homeless population are working homeless, right? Because the cost of living is so ridiculous. For me at the preschool right now, we serve in an underserved community, and we try and keep tuition as low as possible. But when we have additional taxes, or when the minimum wage goes up, these are things that we just can't eat. We're not making a profit. We're just trying to pay teachers and supplies and the roof over our children's heads there at the preschool. That affects us, and guess what? That gets passed on to parents who are already can't afford some basic things and have to choose. Okay, do I pay rent? Do I buy food? Do I keep the water on? Do I keep the power on? I mean, it's so expensive to live here, and that's why people are leaving.
That's California, okay?
Well, right.
But the one thing about that's been consistent about Republicans and their tax cuts, whether it be the Bush tax cuts or the Reagan tax cuts or the Trump tax cuts, they've consistently been taxes for corporations and for the upper middle class and beyond. Yet you're talking about cutting taxes.
Well, I mean, I know that. So in California, and I didn't agree with the specific, part of the Trump's tax plan that wouldn't allow Californians, or not just Californians, but high tax states to deduct the state and local taxes. I didn't agree with that. But we're seeing that families that don't live in high tax states like us have gotten a tax cut, right? Is that not significant or important for Middle America?
I don't think that the tax cuts that the middle class got in this area, in particular, was of real significance.
In our area, absolutely.
Okay,
I agree 100%.
And when I think the average, or the breakdown I saw, was for the average person, across the country, the average for the tax cut for annually was like maybe a $60 increase.
I heard it was a little bit higher.
Really, how much did you hear?
I heard it was about $300.
Well, that's still not much money. That's not even.
But if you're
rent.
living in and here in California, it's not a month's rent. Yeah. But you go to Tennessee, and that can get you through. It's not a month's rent.
I'm from Kentucky.
Are you from Kentucky? No, I'm not comparing that $300 to rent costs, but gas, and that would actually pay for gas for 2 weeks for me.
Okay, well.
But it's significant when you're living paycheck to paycheck, and you're like, okay, I can put gas in my car this day, and then I have to wait. Like, trust me, I've had those years. I was a bartender that would literally, I remember in my early 20s, I would literally not have my car payment. And if I went into work one night and it was a really good night and I would maybe have my car payment. But a lot of Americans live like that. Yeah. They live on a check to check, week by week basis, and they need even if it's $300, even if it's $60, it pays for something.
Right. Well, okay. I want to ask you a little bit about just kind of where your values come from. You said you were part of a faith-based nonprofit. What is your religion? Are you a religious person, or?
I am. I'm a Christian. I'm a Methodist, Free Methodist.
Okay.
My mom was actually raised Catholic, and when she met my father, converted to. People say Christianity, but there's no Catholics or Christians too. My dad's side of the family is extremely religious. My grandmother actually was raised Catholic, and she started going to an Assemblies of God church when she was 15 years old. So she converted from Catholicism to Assemblies of God, and her dad literally beat her because he was a devout, strong Catholic. You're going to go to hell. Tried to beat it out of her. And my grandmother became a huge rock of Christianity for my family, converted her 11 sisters.
Wow, that's busy.
Yeah, yes, she had a big family. We have a huge family in Bakersfield. So, and literally of that, from my grandma's conversion of her sisters, I think there's like 6 or 7 pastors in our family. Like, we are a very religious and conservative family, and that's, how I was raised. My mom was Puerto Rican, Mexican, raised Catholic, so definitely more like they're the more fun, traditional, crazy Hispanic side of the family.
You're married?
I am married.
How long have you been married?
Oh, how long have I been married? 3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
Got a kid?
A 2-year-old, Charlotte. She just turned 2 in April. She's a teenager. I've been calling her my little executive.
One of the things that is really dividing the country right now seems to be the Roe v. Wade and the attack on, or I don't know, I'm showing my personal preferences here, but are you pro-choice or anti-abortion, or?
I am personally pro-life.
Okay.
I was raised that way obviously as a strong Christian. That's how I've lived my life. That's how I will teach my daughter. That's what I will teach my daughter, the values I will instill in her. I believe it's parents and the church's responsibility to teach those values.
Okay.
But I also believe that in limited government, and that a woman should have the right to choose. And I believe that when an unborn child is viable, they should be extended additional rights. So for whether it's 20 or 22 weeks, whatever that is,
What about the heartbeat bills that have been passing throughout the states? After 6 weeks, do you support those ideas?
Again, I would what I support is that a woman has a right to choose until her unborn child is viable.
What is
viable? Means being able to live outside of the womb.
Okay. So you essentially, what about something like the Hyde Amendment? Do you support that?
Explain the Hyde Amendment.
The Hyde Amendment prevents government funding for abortion.
Right. Yeah. So sorry, the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah.
I do not support government funding for abortion.
Okay.
I think it's wrong to use taxpayer dollars for something especially so controversial.
But isn't it a type of women's health care, though? I mean, that is the argument back that the left or the
right. I mean, I wouldn't be unopposed to empowering and strengthening other nonprofits. So, I mean, Autism Speaks, we raised millions of dollars a year for biomedical research that was not taxpayer dollars. I mean, we did get some federal funding, but what I raised here in my chapter, none of it, not of any of it, was government.
What about Planned Parenthood? Do you support funding the Planned Parenthood
not for abortion, for them to perform abortions, but for the other education and contraceptives, and obviously, any of their cancer screenings. My mother passed away from cancer. Anytime we can diagnose cancer for women or for any individual earlier, the better. We should support that. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
That wasn't the nitty-gritty.
No. I want to ask you a little bit about, I want to get more specifically about Katie Hill. But first, before I do, I did want to ask you about the Mueller report and what your take is on that. I mean, right now, Congress is at a to impeach or not to impeach feeling on that.
Right now, I feel like they've been at that for
I think there is some
right.
pressure.
The cusp is.
I would not want to be in Nancy Pelosi's position.
Right.
Did you read the Mueller report?
I did not read it. I listened to it on audio pod Spotify.
What's your take on it?
My take is that we seriously need to put together a team that can prevent this from happening in the future.
Okay.
Prevent Russia from meddling in our elections. They've been doing it since 2014. I don't see them stopping, so I think we need to spend our energy in preventing them and any foreign agency really from meddling in our elections.
Do you think the Trump administration or the campaign colluded with Russians at any level?
I do not.
No.
I mean, I do not. I think that Mueller, I get criticized because it's potato,
I used to say Mueller too.
Valladares. So. I mean, I say my name, Valladares, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Mueller, whatever it is, right? I think he was pretty clear that there wasn't enough in the report to bring an indictment to the president.
Okay, not enough to bring an indictment. But
Correct.
let me ask you a question, though. If there was no official, quote-unquote, collusion or conspiracy with the Russians. Would you at least acknowledge that the Trump campaign kind of flirted with them? When Don Jr. had the meeting and then gets the email and he says, "I love that you've got dirt on the Hillary campaign. I love it."
Well, I mean, if we're saying that they flirted, obviously there was a little bit of knowledge there, and I think that goes for both sides, right? I mean, for both Hillary. It's my understanding that her campaign had actually hired. What was his name? Steele, right? Steele. And I think we need to actually look a little further back into how it originated, and I would support that 100%.
Investigating the investigators.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing that concerns me most is that we have some serious problems in America.
Right. And
this is taking so much attention, and this is taking so much energy and effort that it's creating an even larger divide amongst the parties and amongst in Congress that nothing is getting done. I mean, and it's the typical, it's a typical spin from the lower house right now. We're passing all of these bills, but
Mitch
McConnell isn't picking them up. Well, Harry Reid did the same thing. But the reality is, if they're producing good, true bipartisan legislation, it's going to pass.
Well,
and they're not.
It's not even an issue
platitudes.
of passing. It's Mitch McConnell won't put it before the Senate to even be voted on. So there's no even discussion about the bills that they are passing. So Congress is, in a sense, doing their job. The House is. I mean, but if Mitch McConnell won't let the Senate at least consider it.
So you think that producing a bill that is not going to get true bipartisan support and is not going to really have any legs, and just producing and saying, hey, listen, we know it's not going to get anywhere. We know the other side isn't going to support it, but let's just do it so that we can say that we're doing it.
It's not the other side. It's Mitch McConnell. It is one person who has the majority leader actually assembles when a bill goes to vote. He won't put it on the agenda to even be voted on. So it's not an issue. So things can't even come up for debate in the Senate from what the House is producing.
Because they're not producing any legislation worthy of really getting through the Senate. I mean, that's kind of
You've got Susan
Well,
Collins,
you're right. I haven't read all of the pieces of legislation.
It won't go up for debate, so you don't know if Mitt Romney, who's known to be more moderate about things.
Again, it's politics as usual up there.
Okay.
You saw this with Harry Reid, the same when the House, when Republicans had control of the House, and
I agree that there's a problem with partisanship on both sides.
It's typical. And this is one thing that I agree with the president is that we need to drain the swamp, and we need people who want to go.
Is he draining the swamp? Is Trump draining the swamp?
Not fast enough for me.
Okay.
Not by any means. And I look at things like HR 1 and the For the People Act that Democrats have put forward. And again, platitudes. I would support something more like actual term limits. Let's have a serious discussion about term limits.
What's wrong with HR 1?
Well, first of all, I think Dems are giving themselves money, or they're protecting themselves. But part of their objective is their campaign promise to get money out of politics, but they want to give themselves money. I think it's a 6-to-1. They want of smaller donations. They want that money from the federal government to go to campaigns, which I completely disagree with.
Okay.
The other thing is totally blanked right now. But my point is that if we want to get money out of politics, let's talk about the problem. The problem is that as a congressional representative, you literally, Katie Hill probably felt this like other those in competitive races. Like she was literally just sworn in, and she's already having to raise money again, right?
No, well,
because it's every 2 years. It's every 2 years.
You're running the competition to run against her already.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I gave her a month.
Yeah, exactly. That's what she did against Congressman Knight too. So he was sworn in 1 month and she declared. So.
Right. Well, yeah, she did the same thing.
Yeah.
But the kind of that reality is you get and this is why I would support term limits.
Okay.
Because you become entrenched, you become ineffective, you can't get anything done. It's all about what chairmanship you're going to be on, or how much money you can raise, and if you can't raise money, you're not going to get a good committee. And part of the way of eliminating that is through term limits. So let's have a serious conversation about term limits.
Okay, I don't disagree with you on that. I think term limits is kind of a thing I've been playing with in my head a little bit too. Just kind of makes sense.
What would it look like to you?
Probably 3 terms. That's 6 years. If you can't accomplish something in 6 years in the House, it's time to move on.
See, I would think we could extend it maybe a year, so maybe a 3-year term. And then, maybe 3 of those or 2 of those.
Yeah.
Just because you need that middle ground to not have to worry about,
Well, Jimmy Carter actually said that the president should have the terms changed from 2 terms to just 6 years. And I thought that was an interesting idea too, because he said that way a president can focus on just getting things done in 6 years. That's enough time, and then just move on and not worry so much about being elected, but just getting his work done.
But I think it works a little. I feel like the discourse is more at the congressional level. And again, not that I haven't looked into, not that I want to be open for term limits at the presidential level, but we seem in our history to have a pendulum, right? I mean every once in a while it doesn't. But, for the most part, like if we get stuck with somebody, it's only for 8 years. Those are long 8 years, the Obama years for me.
Was it? It's been a long 3 years for me. Let's talk about Congresswoman Hill. Excuse me, I'm just used to saying Congressman. You kind of talked about the fact that she's not representing this district. Give me some examples of how she's not.
Well, her voting record is lockstep with Democrats. Okay. And we are, and again,
But she is a Democrat. Do you expect
Well, I get it, but her party is so the party is not the party of JFK. It's not the Democrat Party that my mother was a part of by any means.
All right.
This growing acceptance of socialism from Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or AOC is not reflective of this district by any means. And I kind of feel for her because maybe she's not in the left of her party.
She's not. I think I've spoken
but
to her
she's voting. She's voting left of left. So
okay, give me an example.
So
where
for
she's
instance,
voting left to left.
on HR 6, which was was it HR 6 or HR 8? It's it was the gun.
The background check.
The background. No. So yes, that was part of what was in it. But for instance, she refused to vote to allow law enforcement to report undocumented immigrants who were trying to purchase firearms.
Okay.
The majority of our district would not have supported that.
How do you know?
Because of the conversations I'm having. I'm not just having conversations with Republicans. This district is, practically
purple.
Split in, it's purple. It's in thirds, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a conservative district. I look at the district, Katie Hill beat Steve Knight by 8 points.
Pretty big margin, though. You would have to say.
Especially
I think it's
for
actually 9, maybe, but maybe.
Yeah, it's 8 and some.
Yeah.
Where's my infographic? But John Cox lost by 1.7 to Gavin Newsom, right?
Okay.
So this district is still pretty conservative or moderate, I should say. And maybe Katie Hill is being pulled left by her party, but votes like that, where she's not standing up for the values of this district, and not really putting forward, and not really getting anything done. And maybe it's just,
not getting anything done.
We don't have immigration funding for the southern border. We don't have immigration reform or funding for the southern border. It's nothing. What significant bills have passed? They did pass the budget.
Well, I would say the gun registration Act, HR 6, I think you said it was. HR 1, for example, I would think is pretty significant.
That are now law. That are now being practiced.
That's not anything on the House. That's on the
it is
McConnell.
Because it's crap in the bill. If there was more substance in the bill for everyone to support, McConnell would pick it up.
No, that's not true. McConnell has gone on record saying, I'm going to shoot down every single bill. He says, I am the Grim Reaper.
If there was a true bipartisan bill that Republicans in the Senate could support, Mitch McConnell would bring it up. And we can just agree to disagree on that.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that. And I wanted to go back to the Mueller report for a second. Just one more thing I wanted to ask about is there are 10 accounts of obstruction listed in there. You don't think that qualifies as a possible impeachment level? I mean, something for an impeachment inquiry? Shouldn't the president be held accountable for
So,
things?
I mean, it's my understanding that both Barr and Mueller did not say that the president was involved in obstruction.
Mueller's report said specifically that he was not saying that he was exonerated of any crimes.
But he didn't say that he was.
Because of the Justice Department's policy on not indicting a sitting president. In other words, he left it up to Congress to decide what to do.
Right, and I believe that Congress should move forward and just focus on legislation. Even
though there are 10 counts of obstruction of justice.
Well, I disagree. I agree to disagree there.
There are over 1,000 prosecuting attorneys, both Democrat and Republican.
Well, it's actually my understanding that there are more. That they did kick some of the investigations out to other states. So I think there's some other.
I'm talking very specifically about what the president did, where he told Don McGahn to lie, to change records, to make it look one way, to fire Mueller. These are listed as very specific accounts that the president did that is considered obstruction of justice.
Listen, I'm just going back to I trust the FBI, the greatest investigative agency in the world, and the final analysis by Attorney General Barr that there was no collusion and there was no obstruction.
But that's not what it said. It said there was possible obstruction. It says specifically there are 10 counts in there.
Well, I'll go back and read that because that's not my understanding of what I read.
All right. Well, I would suggest you check it again.
Yeah. I'll go back and you'll have to have me back to talk about it.
We will. But I'm holding you to the idea that what you said in your website and everything is that you're not going to follow just partisan politics. Because to me, you look at, I think his name's Justin Amash. Yeah. Where he read it and he said, look.
Yeah, but I also, on that same note, I mean, even Mitt Romney agrees with me. And Mitt Romney is no fan of the president by any means. So, I
think he's following party lines, though.
Mitt speaks his truth. I mean, I just completely disagree. Yeah, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, the things he said about Trump, like, why stop there? No, absolutely not.
All right.
It's because it's the truth.
What do you think about global warming? You mentioned the Paris Accords.
Right.
You think it was a bad idea?
No, I think that it was an overreach of executive power
to sign the Paris Accords.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe in climate change.
Okay.
I believe that you can be cautious of how we approach it while still being aggressive on how we approach it. That the two are not mutually exclusive. We can take care of our environment and take care of our economy.
Okay. Well, see, you're talking about one of the things you talk about as a Republican is the idea of allowing companies to move forward without without any real restrictions or regulation.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
I think if something compromises, there needs to be oversight. There should be regulation.
All right.
If something compromises the environment or public safety, then we should have oversight and regulation on it. Again, being a Republican, and for me specifically, doesn't mean I believe in no regulation or no taxes or no safety net for Americans. That's not what it means at all. It just means we need to be careful in our assessment and implementation of that.
I'm getting some feedback here.
Is it me? Is it my hair?
No. Okay, we're good.
Apologies. I do have just about one more minute.
Okay, well, we'll do this real fast then. We'll do...
Sorry.
Well, let me ask one serious question, and we'll do a lightning round, okay?
Okay.
You did post something about Katie not supporting are not standing against anti-Semitism. I mean, and I'm just curious. It was on Facebook. It was right after what is that Congresswoman? That's
Ilhan Omar's remarks, right?
Yes, thank you. Do you think that's a little harsh?
I would have liked to see my representative come out and condemned Ilhan Omar's remarks. Okay. And that didn't happen.
Okay.
And I know she still voted whatever that resolution was, or I understand the spin, that typical political spin that happened in votes in Washington. But I would have liked my representative to come to support our community 100% and come out and condemn Ilhan Omar on that statement.
All right. Well, let's. You got to get out of here, so we'll do some quick stuff real fast. Lightning round, yes or no questions.
Okay.
I'm going to borrow from Stephen Colbert here a little bit. Donald J. Trump, great president or the greatest president?
That's not yes or no. That's either or, right? He's still president. We'll see, right? History will tell, but he is a good president.
George W. Bush, great president or greatest president?
Oh, great president.
Okay. Do you support more tax cuts or a tax increase?
No, come on, tax cut.
Okay. If there was someone else running other than Bill Weld and Donald J. Trump in the Republican Party, would you vote for someone else, or would you vote for Donald Trump?
No, but every election cycle, whoever's running has to work to earn my vote.
What's the square root of 81?
I have no idea.
Okay.
They said there would be no math after college.
Marvel or DC?
Ooh. Ow. Marvel, DC?
Marvel or DC?
Marvel, DC.
Marvel, DC? Okay.
Both. You can't.
You can't. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh. Star Wars.
Okay. Is a sandwich really not a sandwich without Miracle Whip?
Oh, leave it out. Yuck.
Okay. Game of Thrones finale? Let down or payoff?
Bummer.
Okay. Any tattoos?
No.
Okay. And if you were going to get one, what would it be?
That's been my problem, is I've never been against them, but I've never liked anything enough to put it on my body permanently. But if I were going to get one, my mom, who passed away last year, had a Betty Boop on her back, and I would get that one.
Okay, nice. I've been asking our people as they come in. Katie did this, so I'm going to ask you to do it. Give me your best evil genius laugh.
Great.
That's good. All right. Do you have a joke for us?
What did the apple say to the tree?
I don't know.
Nothing. Apples don't talk.
Good.
I taught my daughter that one.
All right. That works. Okay. I do appreciate you coming in to doing this.
Thank you.
It's been a lot of fun. I wish I could talk to you for hours. I still have another 3 pages of questions.
I'm sorry. I'll be back.
You will come back for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We're going to hopefully have the other Republican candidates on as well. And I don't know, maybe we'll try and do a debate like we did in the future, and like we did for the Democratic candidates.
I'll be there. Just let me know the date, time, and place.
All right, Suzette. Thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this.
Me.
Hope you guys enjoyed the talk.
You've been listening to The Talk of Santa Clarita. Listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud.com, YouTube, and Stitcher. Barring a life event getting in the way, a new podcast is available every Tuesday. Questions, comments, and show ideas can be sent to thetalkofsantaclarita@gmail.com. You can also call or text us at 661-505-8672. That's 661-505-8672. Follow us on Twitter at The Talk of SC or on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at The Talk of Santa Clarita. You can also visit our website by going to www.thetalkofsantaclarita.com. This has been a production of Radio Free Santa Clarita Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To donate, go to radiofreesantaclarita.org/donate. Radio Free Santa Clarita, on the net and on the air, and we're very much aware.
Any questions?